and the sin problem will go down. You fill your heart with one thing, the other won't have a space. But if you focus on creating a vacuum of sin freedom in your life, I'm going to be sin free. I'm going to not sin. What does that create in you? A vacuum. You've got to have good works, the word. You've got to have good things in there to fill that space. As you crowd out sin, sin will have no place in your heart. Okay. Should I just go ahead and give the invitation? Go ahead.
All of this, we have to keep everything in perspective and make sure that I'm glad you're bringing this out because we really got to think about how some things look to other people. We're trying to take and do this. What the world sees a lot of times is that we're trying the holier than thou method, and what you were talking about in the beginning, and they take that as an offense that you basically told them. That's the reason that Jesus was criticized so much. Jesus wanted to tell them what they were doing wrong. Well, nobody wants to hear that you're wrong. But if, and on the flip side of that, when people do hear that they're wrong, they want to try to make sure that you're wrong too, or in some particular way. They want to point out something of yours. And if they can't readily do that, and that's what I'm saying, and what you're saying there is that we've got to have the proper attitude. We're doing that not so that we can get the sense from men that they've got nothing to argue about. We're doing it so that we're acceptable to God. And I think that's hard for us to display to other people, but we need to find a way so that people understand that's what we're doing. Not trying to be better than thou. We're just trying to be better than we were yesterday. Yeah. And that's what's important. And that's what people get the wrong idea of. And, I don't know exactly how to do that. I wish I had the answers, but I think what he's saying here is definitely going to help.
How do we, I get this picture of a homeless man, someone who's hungry, who's obviously hungry. And he goes up to this other homeless man who's got a piece of bread and he's eating. And the man eating turns to the other homeless man and says, I got that bread right down there. So if we can take the idea that I am not better than you in and of myself, but I know where you can get some help for your problem. And yes, I'm filled. And yes, as I eat of that bread, my situation's going to change. It may not look the same, right? I'm going to grow. But realistically, if we can remember back that there was one day, it may not have been the same sins you had, the same problems you had, but I was in the same situation you were. Let me show you where to go to fill your belly with the bread of life. Then we have a reasonable understanding that we're both here in and of ourselves. I'm just showing you where to get bread.
If we're going to go with that analogy, the second homeless man came looking for the answer. We don't go out and teach, don't go out and point out their faults, in my opinion. We act so that they come looking to see what makes us different.
Right. We are to walk around the world with our bread. Right? Yeah. And people see us and go, where did he get that? He looks like he's not in the same situation I'm in. He's walking around with a loaf of bread. When we're asked, we tell. And we teach as well, right? We are to go into the world and teach. But big way we teach is people see, if I'm going up to another person and he looks no different from me, no more satisfied than I am, no more content, he looks just as dirty, and I'm not going to ask him anything. Yes.
I was thinking more of at least in my interaction with folks, the question comes, well, you don't seem to be troubled by all that's going on in this whirlwind of society right now. And I said, no, not. You know, they, particular one man was saying, well, there, he said the asteroid just barely missed the Earth, and why didn't you, were you panicked by that? And I, no, because I have the answer to when the end times will be. And they said, well, I don't understand that peace. So your bread, to me, is the peace that I live with, and it is that peculiar person that they see. That is strange to see you in society, not being frightful about every event and what's going to happen tomorrow and years and, you know, the taxes our great grandkids will be paying and all that. We'll just go on. As Christians, that's what we'll do. We'll just move through all the phases that society goes through in a peaceful, recognizable peace that folks will be drawn to. That's how the life is supposed to work.
Yeah, and back to kind of what you said about the political side. That's where I struggle.
Sure.
We all have to, because do we take some responsibility for the earthly government we're in? Should we advocate for what we think is right? Sure. But do we have comments online or in person where it's our hair's on fire? Because it's obvious to everyone who hears what I have to say, the most important thing in my life is my taxes. The most important thing in my life is, the debt. And that's the thing. How do you have those conversations without it coming across like this is the most important thing to me? Tommy?
We got to be concerned about those things. We can't just let it go by the wayside and think that's going to take care of itself. But we do have a responsibility to society that we can create a situation where hopefully none will suffer through government and stuff to that nature. We know God's in control of that. But you're talking about when it goes to the, he tells those that are.
But Tommy, I'm going to interrupt you. If I'm making more comments about politics and your current earthly safety, happiness, and I'm not commenting as much about your spiritual happiness and what really matters, not the next 40 years, but the next 400 million years, there's a problem there. And so I'm not saying we don't have a responsibility. I'm saying which responsibility is more important and which one's more evident in our lives, that I'm more interested in your eternal home or I'm more interested in your home for the next few years. And
I'm not saying that should take forever.
But it does.
I mean, it can, yeah.
And it appears that way, that's all, and it's what you're saying. We need to be careful of what we're projecting, even though we really don't mean it. And I know Tommy doesn't mean that either.
No, I know you don't. I was just using that as fodder.
But we've got to be careful in what you're saying, because that's what people get out of it. Is that what only thing he ever talks about is politics, how we're going down the tubes, and we've got to be cognizant of what's happening.
But when you get back to the fact of the bread, a guy walking on the bread, when he told them to raise their eyes, the disciples to raise their eyes, the field got ready to harvest. That means we got to do something ourselves. We got to get the equipment ready. We got to get to whatever it is it requires to harvest that field. And so it's not going to harvest itself unless you do something about it.
All right.
You got to get the equipment ready. You got to get out there and do the harvest.
So let's press on, because that gives us the next couple of verses. That's a good segue, Tommy. For you, therefore, that believe such is precious, but for such to disbelieve, the stone which the builders rejected, the same was made the head corner, and a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense. For they stumble at the word, being disobedient, wherewith they were also appointed. So here's it. Here's what I'm going to say about this. Were some people appointed, predestined to stumble at the word of God? They have no control. They're going to be lost when they're born. They're born to be damned. Okay. So who are the people who are stumbling at this rock of offense? So the cross I wrote, this is me, so this is not scripture, nor is it any smart person. This is my statement. The cross of Christ is the signpost in history and in every moment of our lives. It demands a decision, and it informs us of the consequence of our decision. So every person eventually is going to come to a fork in the road, and the cross is standing before them, and they have to make a decision. They've been informed. God's shown them what I'm willing to do to have you back and have a relationship. It's going to require something of you. You're going to have to take my yoke upon you, which is good, which is easy. But it's going to require a decision on your part. Make that decision. And when you make the wrong decision, it becomes a stumbling block, because you can't go back and unsee the cross. You are informed at that moment. I'm making a decision that's contrary to God. And it's seared here in your conscience. And I would say, even for those in Christ, as we go through life, when we make decisions, when we have situations, when we have forks in the road, we look at the cross and we make a decision at that moment. Am I going to go this way or am I going to go this way? Now, sometimes there are a lot of forks in our road that really don't have a cross right there, and it's right or wrong. But there are decisions that you can say, I'm going to choose the better. This is good, good, better. I'm going to choose better. But at every moment, the cross reminds us, and I say the cross of Christ, we use the cross as a symbol of the life of Christ, the teachings of Christ, the way of Christ, not just his death, but his teachings. But when we are informed of the cross, of the life of Christ and what God has provided, then we make decisions. We have a stumbling block. If we make the wrong decision, it should make us stumble. And it's, if you choose unrighteousness, then you're destined for, you're appointed toward the disobedience and the consequences of it. But you, let's not talk about those who are disobedient. You are an elect race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people of God's own possession, so that you may show forth the excellencies. Does that sound like just being free from sin? It's more than that. You're to show the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness. Yes, sin-free, out of darkness into what? Light. His marvelous light, who in the time past were not a people, but now are the people of God, had not obtained mercy, but now you've obtained mercy. Beloved, I beseech you, and again, here he says it again, abstain from fleshly lusts. What does the word abstain mean?
Stay away from.
Come here.
Okay.
This is the symbol. Don't let me knock you down. This is the symbol of abstain.
I got a wife to work.
Oh, the paramedics are coming. I just triggered.
Yeah, that's my bad, but yeah.
The idea, abstain means to hold at arm's length.
Right. Stay away from.
You are to give sin or fleshly lusts the Heisman. You just stiff arm it. Push it away. Hold it at arm's length. Don't even let it in close to you. I have a story, but I'm not going to say it. We're going to press on. Having your behavior. I was at Jack's yesterday with Vance, and this, I'm going to tell you, apparently. I had this woman, I know her. I think she's a patient of mine. I've never had a person in my life besides my wife get that close to me and touch me that much. She just, a toucher. She playing with I wanted to abstain from her. But anyway, it was quite awkward. But then she did it to two other people. And I was like, well, that's just her. Having your behavior seemly. What is seemly? Behavior seemly.
It's like it's going to happen.
Seemly means, I'm going to try to find the actual word. We're in 11. Ideal. Have your behavior be ideal. among the Gentiles. Why? Wherein when they speak against you as evildoers, they may be by your good works, which they behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. I got 2 minutes. What's the day of visitation? And why are they going to glorify God in the day of visitation? I think that's what I was taught. This word, day of visitation, one other time. And that's when Jesus, do I have it written down? Nope, that's next week. Jesus uses this phrase once. It's twice in the Bible. Right here in Peter, but also Jesus uses this phrase in Luke 19. Let's turn there real quick. Somebody read it real fast. I want someone who reads fast and loud. Luke 19, 42 through 44. If the second bell rings, stay here. Keep the kids out. We're going to finish this.
Saying, if thou hast known, even thou at least in
So Jesus is speaking, and say it again.
the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemy shall cast a trench about thee and compass thee around, and keep thee in on every side, and shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children with thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation.
Thy visitation. So what's Jesus saying about Jerusalem?
Well,
There had been a visitation. God came to them in the form of Christ, and what did they do? Rejected him. So what if instead of, I wrote this down. Again, this is the book of Barry.
Brother Keith, it could be talking about when King Nebuchadnezzar, Chaldees and Babylonians came against Jerusalem and besieged it, dug trenches around it.
Well, I think that's a prediction about what's about to happen in AD 70 to the fall.
Carve them out.
But the day of visitation was Christ came to the Jews and they rejected him. That's the day of visitation. What if this day of visitation that it's talking about, instead of, hey, on the day of judgment, when you're lost in sin and you're going to be damned, you'll glorify God because you'll realize I was there. The Christians were there teaching you. Maybe it means that. But what if it means this? Could this be a reference not to the end time, but that our good deeds are a preparatory step? So people see our good deeds, and because of our good deeds, we are planting and watering, and we are showing the glory of God, and it nourishes the soil of that person, so that when Christ is presented to them or preached to them, in their day of visitation, when Christ is presented to them, the gospel is presented to them, they're ready. So let's read it this way. Think about that. Have your behavior ideal, seemly among the Gentiles, whereas they may speak against you as evildoers, but when they see your good works, when God comes to them, like Jesus came to Jerusalem, when God comes to them, how is he going to come to them? Through the word, through us, through the preaching of the gospel, that they glorify God. So we're going to get a little piece of this in 1 Peter 3, because how are wives to convert their non-Christian husbands? So they see their good works, they see their good deeds, they see their purity, their behavior, and without a word, they are converted. So sometimes our good works may be the preparatory so that when people of the world finally get to see the gospel of Christ, their soil, their heart has been prepared by seeing our good deeds, and they go, now I perceive. I understand. Now I know. And I'm ready. I've been prepared for the day of my personal visitation. And I guarantee you, her going to church was a very small part of that. It's the way she lived in that home, probably that led that down that road. But that's a part. Thanks, guys.